Hey folks, we are back at iamdeveloper.live. I'm your host, Nick Taylor, and today I am hanging out with Andrew Hedges. I almost said your handle instead of your name, and then I was like, nope, yeah, no, there is a name. There is a name. How you doing today, Andrew?
I'm doing great. I had 2 cups of coffee, so I'm wired. I only
Yeah,
just
no,
started drinking coffee. Like
okay.
I was a Diet Coke drinker for a long time. That's terrible for you.
Okay.
So I thought, well, coffee, same effect, but it's more natural. It should be healthier. So
Yeah.
my gateway was cold brew. My partner
Okay.
Valerie, she drinks the cold brew sometimes. So I started to kind of get used to the taste. Finally, just started drinking hot coffee like literally in the last month. And so
Okay.
um, Stacy Taylor, she was up visiting and I had a mocha and I was like, oh, that's not so bad. And then I've been doing the lattes and stuff anyway. So yeah, I've had a bit of caffeine today. So hopefully that's helpful
Uh,
on a stream.
Oh yeah, yeah, no, definitely all good. But I'm in the same camp because I work out Monday, Wednesday, Friday in the morning. So when I get up about 6:15 a.m. my time, and then I typically have an energy drink,
Mhm.
but sometimes I'll have coffee in the morning. I just find I just don't want something hot right away before I work out. So I have that, and
Yeah.
then I had one this morning, and I've already had 3 other coffees, and I think this is my 3rd one I have here right now. So
Okay.
so apologies to everybody watching the stream if me and Andrew are just bouncing off the walls, but we'll do our best to still maintain a professional look. Cool, cool. All right.
Professional-ish. That's kind of my vibe.
Yeah,
So
yeah. Exactly, exactly. Cool. So, yeah, so we kind of decided on a bit of it seems like a bit of a clickbaity title. Why is it so damn hard to break into tech? But even though it is a little clickbaity, I think the title really is valid. It's been tough for we'll talk about the Collab Lab soon, but I know it's been tough for like a lot of early career devs that I've spoken to, as well as career changers. Like the job market's pretty rough right now. I think in terms of people trying to land that first or maybe second role, and just curious what you might have seen or what your thoughts are on kind of like the current state of breaking into tech, since you work very closely with a lot of people as well.
yeah, for sure. It's interesting because it seemed like it was getting better there for a while. Like I used to work at Zapier. Like Zapier started to open up to what we would call an L1 engineer. So like kind of the first level
Okay.
on in a like 6 or 7 level kind of ladder. I was seeing more
Yeah.
sort of more companies kind of be open to it to early career people. And then the layoffs started happening, right? So now I
Yeah.
feel like a lot of companies they're pulling back from hiring at all, much and then when they do, they're trying to sort of maximize the value for the money that they're getting and stuff. And that's a whole set of misconceptions that I've had to kind of fight against in my career. Is like
Okay.
actually it's great now at Assistive Labs. I'm kind of I'm one of the founders, so I get to make those some like not by myself, but make kind of set the tone a little bit around some of those decisions. But previous jobs, I
Yeah.
was always kind of reporting to somebody. It was maybe a bigger organization, and got a lot of questions like, well, if you could only hire one person, are you going to hire a junior person or a senior person? It's like, well,
Yeah.
like can I only hire one person? Like, like at the time, I didn't have a good answer for that kind of that line of questioning. Um,
Yeah.
so anyway, that's all to say that now I think as companies are kind of scaling back from hiring in general, you know,
Hmm.
they're it's going to be a little tougher for a while for early career people to break in. It's still happening. I still see Collab Lab. I'm connected to hundreds of early career people. I still see people getting jobs because I think there are real benefits to having people earlier in their career on a team.
Yeah.
One of the things when I was at Zapier, what I'll say is what I would call as a mistake that we made was
Okay.
we spent some time. We spent a good year and a half, 2 years trying to make the teams kind of top heavy so we could bring in junior people.
Yeah.
And that sounds good in theory. Like you want to have support systems in place so those early career people can succeed and everything. The
Mhm.
problem that we ran into is that then we had everyone was like a level 3 or level 4 in our kind of ladder.
Okay.
And then a year into that, they all wanted promotions at the same time. And to get up to that next level,
Okay.
like it's kind of like a funnel. There are fewer and fewer of those roles as you go up. And so we had people start leaving the company because there were no opportunities for promotions. So to me, like the
Okay.
healthiest team is one that has people that are across all the levels. You know, you want very senior people to kind of guide you on the big, kind of the big directional pieces. You want people who are just thrilled to be there and like pounding out the sort of production level work, and you want everything in between. Like that's to me a healthy team. So, um,
Yeah.
I don't know. I've been talking a lot. Please ask a question.
No, I definitely agree with a lot of that. Like in terms of like I I'm a I'm a big fan of definitely like as somebody more senior, I think it's my responsibility to mentor people, to support them, uh uh champion them, but what's the words, not, I don't mean advocate, there's another word, a sponsor, sponsor people
Hmm.
to do better and stuff, and these are all things like I think should be baked into a more senior role. But yeah, to your point, like when you're starting out a company, or it's like you have to hire people right now for something critical. uh, yeah, like it is it okay? Like I everybody seems to lean towards senior, and I understand why the reflex is there, because
Hmm.
it there is, when somebody newer comes on, or somebody with less experience, you have to expect that there's time that's going to be spent, ramping up this person, and also just like I was saying, the mentoring and so on. So like you will, I think, move slower initially, like on what you're doing potentially, but by spreading your knowledge, and like teaching these new people more, like that's definitely going to scale long term. But I definitely agree, like, if you don't have that support built in, like I understand why some people might not hire juniors right away, like, but at the same time, I'm thinking like, well, you should build it out so that you can hire juniors, right? So it's like
Yeah, that's
it's
that's that's maybe the best point of it all, right? Like, um, so Stacey Taylor, who we'll probably talk about again, she and I co-authored a post on LinkedIn a couple of years ago now about
okay.
sort of what you need to do to set up people to succeed, the early career people to succeed. And the thing about it is all those things that you would do, providing structure and context, good documentation,
Yeah.
strong onboarding, mentorship, blah, 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 all that stuff benefits everybody, no matter what level you're at, right? So, if
Yeah.
you're super senior and you know everything, which there's nobody that knows everything, if
Yeah.
you're super senior, it still benefits you because you're learning leadership, and you're getting an opportunity to mentor and grow in other ways. If you are a mid-level person and the stuff's better documented, you're saving time. You're not having to, even though you could, you don't have to spelunk through all the code to figure out what to do next. It's, if stuff's documented, the sort of rote stuff, the stuff you can write down. Why
Yeah.
wouldn't you do that? And
Exactly.
that's all the stuff that sets up early career people for success. So
Yeah, and I totally agree with you that like it benefits everybody, and it's kind of, well, not funny, but so at Netlify, like I mean, in tech in general, there's lots of acronyms, as you know, and
uh-huh.
um, we've been like I make it a point when somebody mentions an acronym in a, if we're in like a Zoom, because like most of our calls are Zoom, we do async stuff as well mainly, but if there's this, like a Zoom call, like, and somebody throws out an acronym without saying what it is, I immediately, if assuming I know it, or I'll Google it, I'll just paste in what it is, not saying like, okay, well, if you don't know what this is what it is. I just paste it in, like I don't
Mm-hmm.
even, and it's kind of neat what's happened. So like we started this glossary at work. So
Mm-hmm.
we've been keeping a list of the glossary, which is super helpful for people to go look at things. And then more recently, my coworker from Dev 2, who also works at Netlify now, Suzanne Aitchison, who's awesome, she integrated I think it's like it's like a glossary bot in Slack. So like you can, I think
Oh, nice.
I haven't used it. I haven't used it yet, but I think you can add something to the glossary, but you can definitely ask about something. So it's kind of nice, and like, because like, I, I remember when I was younger, it's like people are rambling on talking about like even ROI, like return on investment. I didn't know what that was for the longest time. And I'm talking
Uh-huh.
like this is like early days when Google was still fresh, no Stack Overflow. And so like, I did the thing which you shouldn't do which is I just kind of nodded, pretending I know what's going on because I didn't want to look silly.
Yeah.
So I think, yeah, just spreading that knowledge, whatever it is, and it definitely helps everybody for sure.
That's a great idea. Yeah, I could. Is it like slash what is, and then you put the acronym or something like that?
Yeah, I'll have to double check, but yeah, it's like all the other the Slack commands. So I think it's like
Yeah.
slash glossary maybe.
Oh, okay.
I'll have to test it out after and get back to you. But yeah, stuff like that, and like what you were saying, like you know, you want to spread the knowledge, like it. Like I remember early on in my career, there would be folks that it's like I don't know if they did it on purpose, but there was like this mentality that I shouldn't share my knowledge because it would risk my job. Because if I tell other people the
Hmm.
secrets I know, but I think that's a total BS take on it. Like you're actually more valuable to a company, like assuming the company is a good company, I guess, but you're more
Yeah.
valuable to the company if you're spreading the knowledge of what because like if something you don't want to be a single point of failure. And also it's like I like going on vacation, like I wouldn't mind if somebody else knew how something
Yeah,
worked.
yeah.
If
It's
you
the vacation
if you want to
factor. I
go.
don't like the bus factor; it's too violent. But the vacation factor for sure.
Yeah,
And um, yeah, it's. I mean, on my teams, if you're not sharing knowledge, then you're at risk of losing your job. Like it's not like it's just
yeah,
not an
yeah,
option. Like you have to. Everything's changing so fast, right? And not only do we need to go on vacation, but what you know now is going to be out of date in 3 or 6 months anyway. So why not share the knowledge and like keep everybody up to date?
yeah.
My teams tend to be like my teams tend to be very collaborative, which is probably not a big surprise to you, but that's kind of based on my leadership style, which is an affiliative leadership style. So, to me, it's like
Okay.
relationships on the team, people working well together. That's like the most important thing, and we can figure everything else out. If people have good working relationships, they're sharing knowledge, they're learning from each other, they're teaching each other. Like, there are very few problems that we can't handle. There may legitimately
Yeah.
be things that we have to like bring in an outside expert or whatever, but for the most part, together everyone achieves more, right? I mean, it's how it works.
Yeah. Yeah, no, for sure. Totally agree. And the thing too is like, even if you're a senior person, things change at work. You're gonna learn new things. Like, I don't know. I wouldn't want to work somewhere if I wasn't really learning things. Like me, at
Oh,
least.
100%. Yeah.
It's because if you're doing the same thing all the time, it's you know, it's just not. I don't find it that motivating. So like, everybody's different, but like I kind of being most jobs I've started is kind of like I don't know if people use this term still, but baptism by fire, like you're just thrown
Hmm.
into the mix and you just go and it's just kind of I just find it kind of fun and I don't mind that I don't know things and like we're kind of going all over the place here, which is good because
I know.
we always go on tangents on the stream, but like I think like learning to code is definitely important. And we got a few folks in the in the LinkedIn chat. Hey everybody. Hey
Nice.
Fritzen, Shelly, and Devin and Amanda. Nice to meet you. And well, I know Shelly already and Fritzen, um, but yeah, like I think that's the difference too when you're first starting off is a lot of it is more about the code to some degree. Like you need to be competent to
Mhm.
do a task or whatever. You definitely still need, people call it soft skills or people skills. I like to call them just don't be an asshole skills. Like just be a human being. But
My
you
term
know,
for it
like
is catalytic skills. So the
okay.
idea that you're helping the team kind of do things better by cooperating. But yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
I like yours
But
better, actually. Might start using that.
but the thing is, like, yeah, like early on in the career, you know, like you're still working with people, obviously, but a lot of it's more focused around the code and like you know we can touch on this too, like the interview process. But like as you get more senior, like code is still important, but it's not like the driving factor. You know, like it's more like you know what are the business needs? What are we really trying to accomplish here? The code is like the what gets it done in a lot of cases. But so like there's definitely this focus on code a lot for sure at the beginning. And
Hmm.
oh, and we got somebody in the chat saying Laura Botel, when mentorship is part of the culture at all levels, I think it becomes easier to bring on folks at all levels. I think we would
Yep.
both agree with that. Yeah. um but yeah, the thing
Can
is,
I
so
just say
like,
something about mentorship a little bit? Because there's I think I absolutely agree with sorry, I can't really see the chat. Laura, is that who said that?
yeah, Laura, yeah.
Okay, Laura. Absolutely agree with that. And there are different types of mentorship. So what we often like, kind of, I think most people's default around mentorship is sort of like, I'm gonna get to know you, and we're gonna talk about your career, and I'm gonna help you kind of get to whatever kind of the place where I am. Like I'm where you want to
Yeah.
be. Let me help you get there. That's sort of default mentorship in a lot of people's minds. There's also the
Mhm.
concept of technical mentorship, which is much more focused, targeted, and it's really sharing of knowledge. Like I know SQL, right? And you want
Yeah.
to learn, you want to get better at that. And we're gonna have a few sessions, and I'm gonna kind of transfer knowledge to you. Technical mentorship is cool because it can go, junior to senior. If you're fresh
Yeah.
out of boot camp and you just learn the latest, React techniques or something, there's some curmudgeonly senior dev on the team who is stuck in, I mean, God forbid, 2020 or something, right? Um,
Yeah.
that the technical mentorship can go the other direction. So that's kind of a cool thing. And
Mhm.
then there's a third concept called coaching, which
Yeah.
everyone's heard the word, but coaching is more about, I have a goal, and you're going to help me. You're going to hold me accountable. You're going to we're going to have conversations around like, what have you tried, what's working, what's not working. And the cool thing about
Yeah.
coaching is that the two people don't even need to be experts in the same domain. So you could have
Yeah.
a person who's you know really, like, they're a product manager, and they could be coaching a developer. That's totally fine, because it's much more of it's a little bit more of a detached thing, and just like kind of goal oriented. Anyway, that's a
Yeah.
whole little thing, little lesson about mentorship.
Yeah. There's another comment. This one's coming from YouTube from Karen. She's saying, I noticed even a lot of entry level job descriptions require 5 years of experience now. What are your thoughts on that? I
Yeah.
definitely have thoughts, but I'll let you go ahead, Andrew. Thanks for the
yeah,
question, Karen.
yeah. Thanks, Karen. I definitely have thoughts about that too. It's that's a just a misunderstanding of what entry level means. Entry level is supposed to mean no experience, no
Yeah.
professional experience. Like, you've studied a little bit, you have some concepts in your head, but entry level should mean that you come in and you learn on the job, and that the company has resources in place to help you get kind of learn how to be a professional in the field.
Yeah.
So I don't know why companies do this, because they're just setting themselves up for the wrong dynamic. Like,
Mhm.
saying associate engineer, or whatever, 5 years is still, it's nowhere close to entry level, but
Yeah. Yeah.
the problem is, like, by posting it with that, like, that it's an entry level role, these companies are going to be flooded with thousands of applicants, because there's so many people who are trying to break in. Um,
Mhm.
they're going to basically just swamp their recruiters with having to sift through all this kind of noise to get
Yeah.
to somebody who actually has 5 years of experience, because they just asked for people who have 0 years of experience. It's a mistake on the part of companies to do that, for sure. And I wish I knew how to
Yeah.
fix that, because it's so prevalent.
Yeah. I see it all the time too. And like, I, I've heard this argument before. I wonder if it's just companies are trying to, be on the cheap in terms of like somebody with more experience and just saying it's a lower level role, but even that is not cool, I don't think.
Oh no.
And I totally agree with you that it really is the zero experience, and this is where it gets difficult and weird in the interview process because like they always ask for some experience, like, or at least
Mhm.
the interview I've been to, like, especially when I was starting off, like, "What's your experience?" "Well, it's like, I don't have experience because 'cause I'm trying to get my first job," and, like, I know we both got our jobs, like, a long, long time ago, our first jobs, but it's still I think those that frustration is still valid, like, and but this is where it's like, I don't know what the answer is, like, there's definitely problems with the interview process in general because it's been like I've had interviews and I'll also preface this with I am a white guy in tech, so there's a lot of things that I never have to worry about or think about, but, and I would do take home exams or I, test story or, implement something, and I spent a lot of time on these things, which I know a lot of people don't necessarily have time. I just had that privilege to do that, and I was just like, "I'm just gonna make this as good as I can," and
Mhm.
so it's I have, like, conflicting thoughts about this, like, even the stuff I've done because, like, when I think of it from, like, athletic perspective, it's a competition, like, only one person
Mhm.
is gonna get this job, and I wanna get this job, so I'm gonna do whatever I can to get this job, obviously within legal means, but,
Mhm.
like, so I'm like, I'm gonna stand out as much as I can, and I think it's good to stand out, but, like, again, like, I went the extra mile, I had tons of time to do it that I not everybody does, so it's like, I'm already at an advantage to some degree versus other people, even though I am using my own time, and it did help me get these jobs, but, like, I'm just really conflicted.
Mhm.
Like, there's that balance, like, if somebody's trying to break into tech and, like, you know, you're working in a restaurant or something right now, you might be doing a boot camp or, like, the Collab Lab or something, you already have a lot of stuff on the go, like, how do you
Mhm.
manage these take-home tests and stuff? And I don't know what the answer is because at the same time, like, I think there should be some kind of test, but at the same time, when it's a brand new person, I don't know. I don't have an answer. It's just kinda like
Yeah.
random thoughts.
I mean, I don't know how many hundreds of developers I've interviewed over the years, but it's what the thing you're talking about is a very real problem. Because not only like you had the privilege of having the time to put into it, you
Yeah,
also because of what you look like and what your name is and those kinds of things, you pattern
yeah,
match for a lot of people, not for everybody, but for a lot of people, to someone who probably knows what they're talking about. You know what I mean? You get the
yeah,
benefit of the doubt, and so not all like you're like people talk about it as playing on easy mode or whatever, right? Like it's not
yeah,
that you can't fail at the game, like that's totally a possibility, but like it's just
yeah, for
you're
sure.
going to encounter a little bit less friction in the process. People are going to know how to pronounce your name the first time they meet you. Like they're little things that all add up to it just being that much harder for for certain people to break in, and like this is why honestly, like we started the Collab Lab. We can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah,
But
for
it's
sure.
like,
Definitely talk about it.
yeah, for sure. I mean, why is it so hard to break into tech? Like there's a lot of systemic things in there. We started the Collab Lab to help people break in. Um, Kind of spotted a gap in kind of the skills that people are taught as they're trying to break in. So, a
Yeah,
lot of people either self study or they go to a boot camp. Um, we tend not to focus as much on people who are in computer science degrees because like they already have a lot of advantages just being in university and whatever. Like a lot of people that come through our program are they're a little bit later in life, they're trying to switch careers, and that's actually pretty tough. um,
mhm,
they might have been a nurse or a bike mechanic or like who knows what, right, and they're trying to become a developer. um,
yeah,
and I do think that some of that stuff is becoming easier. Honestly do. Like I think some of the stigmas are breaking down. I
mhm,
see fewer companies that are insistent on a computer science background. whereas it used to be a web developer, you had to have a computer science background. It's like, I don't have a computer science background. And there have only been a couple of times in my entire career where I really think I would have benefited from it. It probably would have made my career ceiling a little higher, in terms of like, I could have gone deeper technically or something with some of the fundamentals, but I didn't really need it. Anyway, I'm off the topic of Collab Lab.
No, it's all good. It's all good.
But the Collab Lab, so the gap that we saw is that, people they're learning the coding side of things, but they're not getting the experience of working on a software team. And so we created Collab Lab. We don't focus on teaching coding. People they get better at it because they're most of the time for the first time getting code reviews by professional web developers. So they do get better at coding, but really the thing we're focusing on is, and this, you've been a mentor, is these collaboration skills. So, pair programming, how to write a good, pull request, kind of give your teammates context on what the change is, how to do a code review, how to receive a code review, how to demo your work, how to talk about and communicate about the things that you're building. For a lot of people, if you're self-studying, you might get into an interview situation and never have said GraphQL out loud, or like different, like some of these words are, who knows how you pronounce that stuff when you read it, right? It's just 8 weeks of mostly of talking about your work. You're pair programming, so you're having to talk about it with somebody. You're demoing all that stuff. And we try to design it so that it isn't gatekeepy. That's not a word, but you know what I mean?
It's a word now. It's a word now.
It's a word now. So it's only 5 hours a week. That's the expectation, because people have caregiver responsibilities, or they're in school full time, or they have a job already, right? Like they're having to make pay the bills. So, but making it 5 hours a week, we emphasize, like in our selection process. So, I do this in conversation. So I kind of stack things up, then I have to kind of unwind it. So, our selection process is open right now. Applications are open. So, we are actually taking applications for the next cohort, which was going to kick off at the beginning of April, first week of April. So if you go to the-collab, here it is, the collablab.codes, go to the participate link over here. There's an apply now button. So
I'll drop that in the chat.
Actually, I can look at that for a second. So Collab Lab is this 8-week program where you work on a team of 4 developers under the guidance of 3 mentors. And usually that mentor team has at least 2 people who are currently professionals in the field. A lot of times the third mentor is a person who's recently come through the program, so they have that kind of experience fresh in their mind. We have all this support, and you have 8 weeks to build an app together, and just learn how to participate in a retrospective. Like what's a retrospective? And like what's the purpose of it? How do you give feedback to your team? Like all that stuff that you get into an interview, and this stuff comes up. A hiring manager isn't necessarily thinking about the fact that you've never done this before, and so they might kind of drop some terms related to maybe an agile work methodology or whatever, and you're kind of like, I've never heard sprint before in this context, but now having just been around it for 8 weeks, at least you have a little bit of kind of foothold where you can kind of understand a little bit of what's being asked of you. So people come out of it way more confident going into their interview process.
Definitely. And from like you said, I was I'm still pretty active in Collab Lab, but I can't mentor at the moment because I'm just a little busier at work. But but when I did mentor was it last summer? I believe it was last summer. I did see people kind of self-organize. So like there is the aspect of, like you're saying, collaborating. Like that's the super important part. I mean, like that's why it's called the Collab Lab. But those, like, working with a team is super important. And this is also why, like, I'm a big fan of open source as well. Like if you can, like, before I always used to just say do it, but like, again, do it if you're interested in it and you have time for it. But it's the same it's not the same thing because you have a dedicated team with the Collab Lab, but doing these things like that out in the open, it
Hmm.
gets one, people can see what you're doing, and they'll see how you're interacting with people too. And the Collab Lab projects, I believe, because I gave a talk yesterday demoing one of them. I believe the projects become public after they're done, I think. So
They're public the entire time, so people could follow along. Yeah,
realize I thought it was
yeah.
private while we were doing it. Okay. Yeah. So already there, like it's something like that is perfect for like if you're interviewing, because one, you can talk about the Collab Lab and what you did, but your code is out there. People can literally see how you interacted with other people, because it
Hmm.
doesn't happen often, but like because I've been working in open source since I was at Dev 2, so like 2020
Hmm.
Jan. And occasionally you'll just get very uh non-respecting people, or just people that demand things, and it's like,
Hmm.
one, it's open source, and it's like, and the thing that blows my mind about these things is like, if I was an employer and I happened to see that, I'd be like, there's no way I'm gonna hire that person. I don't care if they can like build Tony Stark's whatever it is there. I don't know. I'm at a loss of words today, but I'm a fan. Arc reactor. Anyways,
Uh-huh.
but you know what I mean? It's like, it's just not worth it. And like I still, and this isn't just like in open source, like even people like online on like any kind of social platform, it's like, I'm like what are you doing? Like it's like, I mean,
Yeah, I don't
I
know. I
guess it,
mean, maybe they think it's not going to be seen. Maybe, I don't
yeah,
know. Or maybe they think it's
I don't know.
fine. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't get it.
but yeah, I mean, on the plus side, it's a easier way to weed out people, I guess, that you would never want to work with.
Yeah.
But but yeah, getting back to talking about the Collab Lab, like I was saying, we would do. You said it, like you said, it's about 5 hours a week. We have like a midpoint check in every week. It's not mandatory, but if people have
Hmm.
questions, and like I was saying, a lot of the people on the team, so the teams are small, so it's 4 people, and there was the mentors, and you would see the people just on the teams just interacting and trying to sort these things out themselves. And like obviously if they were stuck, they would come to the mentors. But i
Hmm.
i I, I don't think I'm surprised, but it's just nice to see that, hey, I don't know this. Let's figure it out together. Let's,
Hmm.
and these are all like, not to sound cheesy or anything, but they're real world skills you need at an actual job, So it's like, and again, the fact that it's all open, I think something like this is just a great opportunity for folks to stand out in some way, at least, because I
Hmm.
think at some point you have to stand out, because like it's something that we'll talk about in a sec here. But there's a question in the chat from
Hmm.
Sophia. What interviewers stuck out to you, and why? Are there any interviewers that you specifically remember to this day? Ah, that's a pretty
Uh,
good question.
yeah, yeah. So, meaning people that I've interviewed, is that? I think that's
I
the
think
gist of it.
I think, well, yeah, it could be people you interviewed, but I think Sophia's thinking more of like the people that interviewed you potentially, because yeah, what
Yeah,
interviewers
I
stuck
have
out to
interviewed
you?
for a lot
Yeah.
of jobs, but like when I have interviewed people, because I've done a lot more of that. The thing that's kind of stuck out, like very, very few people have asked me anything about my management style. And when you're in
Okay.
one of these roles, your most important relationship is with your manager, because they, for better or worse, have a lot of control over whether you get a promotion, what opportunities, what things you work on, all that kind of stuff. And so I've
Yeah.
only had it happen maybe twice out of I don't know. I don't know how many developers I've interviewed. It's in the hundreds for sure. Twice
Okay.
where people have said, "What's your management style? Like, how do you go about your job?" And when they
Yeah.
do, that's a really good sign to me. It's like, oh, you understand what you're getting into. Like, I try to ask it anytime I'm interviewing
Yeah.
for jobs myself, uh, because like if that person, I mean, even if they give what sounds like kind of an okay answer, like if they're not
Mhm.
self-aware enough to be able to answer the question fluidly, if they're like, oh,
Yeah.
and they have to kind of stumble and think of it, that's not a good sign. Like as a manager, um, you should be it's like being a parent, to be honest. Like
Mhm.
you should be self-aware enough to be able to kind of answer that question. Like you should know what that answer is as a, if you're an experienced manager or someone who kind of, is being thoughtful about that work, because it's very different than being a developer,
Yeah.
and it takes a different kind of set of skills.
Yeah, no, for sure. Uh, on my end, like in terms of Sophia's question, like what interviewers stuck out, um, honestly, a lot of, I'd say most of my interviews stuff didn't really stick out. Like I think typically because like I got my first professional job in 2002, so I'm a little long in the tooth as well. But none of the interviews were really great, and I can honestly say like the best interview I've ever had is at Netlify where I'm currently working,
Mm-hmm.
and and also actually I I interviewed at Facebook. I'm glad I didn't end up working there, but the first initial interviews, like there were coding challenges, and this is like the weird code challenges where you're not even an editor. You're like, I think it's CoderPad, but it's like you can't like you don't get any linting or any syntax errors. It's just like the code there.
Oh, yeah.
But what I liked about that, and I kind of tried to drive the interview that way myself, but so maybe it was more me doing that, but I tried to make it more collaborative, like, hey, what do you think about this I'm doing here? Or, for a couple reasons. One, like I don't interview that often, and like a lot of my jobs have been through people I know, but like anytime I have interviewed, I still get nervous. Like I can't speak for everybody else, obviously, but I don't think that like nervousness will ever go away. And it's not like I'm about to burst in tears or anything. It's just like
Mm-hmm.
there's that anxiousness, like, am I good enough or what, I don't
Mm-hmm.
know. Do I really know what I'm doing? Like even after all this time, it's so
Yeah.
weird how your brain just does that to you. Um, but I really enjoyed it. Like when I interviewed at Netlify, I interviewed with two of my now coworkers, and it was just, again, it was that like collaborative, like we had a problem to solve, and the details of that isn't really important. It's more just like we started discussion and then approaches, and then like I
Mm-hmm.
did some coding and talking about it really, and it was it was just, I enjoyed that whole experience of just like, hey, we're just two people hanging out or three people hanging out talking about something like you would do with your real coworkers. Like, there's
Mm-hmm.
none of this like, because a lot of interviews, it's for me, when I have interviewed, it's felt more like me against them,
Mm-hmm.
like which is a weird dynamic because like they're trying to hire somebody and then they're like, okay, no, let's give them this super hard thing that even we don't know how to how to do,
I
but
know. I know. Yeah. What's up with that?
it's
Yeah.
gonna be a killer interview. So,
Yeah.
but
We're gonna
anyways,
see how they
that's me.
solve problems by them trying to
Yeah,
solve something that I couldn't solve myself. Yeah, I have a couple of
yeah.
interview stories I could share. So back in 2010, I interviewed at Yahoo, and
Okay.
I interviewed with this guy Julian Lecomte, and he was one of the developers of Yahoo's internal JavaScript framework. And
Oh,
he asked me,
UE.
yeah, yeah, YUI, right?
Yeah,
And
yeah.
he asked me on a scale of 1 to 10, where 1 is nothing and 10 is Douglas Crockford, who I'm sure no one on the stream has ever heard of, but used to be like this guru of JavaScript. Wrote the book, the JavaScript, the Good Parts. Yeah, where do you rate yourself? And I was like, oh, yeah, about a 9. And he's like,
Yeah.
oh, okay. So the rest of the hour. So how would you do this? Or like, what is, like in a set timeout, if you set the value to this, when is the thing going to run? And just like all these kind of fundamental concepts. And I was like, like I was not a 9. Narrator, colon, I was not a 9. So kind of, that was like a very humbling moment for me. I kind of thought I was this
Yeah.
hotshot developer and stuff and kind of knew a lot, but really like I was on there's that curve of, oh, I know nothing. Oh, I know everything. Oh, no, no, no. I know less than nothing. Like you kind of get to the point where like I am okay with the fact that I know zero about anything, but I can learn how to, I can figure out how to solve problems. Anyway, so I was at the top of
Yeah.
that curve of like, oh yeah, I'm hot shit, and I found out
Yeah.
that I was not. Around the same time, about 6 months later, because I got laid off 6 months later after I got a job at Dig, if anybody remembers
Okay.
dig.com, DIGG. And just at the wrong time, like they released V4, which was this kind of ill-fated thing. The community rejected it. The company started losing money. They cut half of engineering.
Okay.
And I needed to get a job really fast. And I was in the Bay Area. So I had, there were tech companies, you couldn't turn around without running into somebody in a Google sweatshirt or whatever. So I had an interview at Square, and
Okay.
this was actually kind of funny. This is a lot of tangents, but that the San Francisco Giants had just won the World Series, and my interview was the
Okay.
same day as the parade for the like downtown, the parade. So like I was trying to get on BART and get to this interview, and I was like, oh my god, like I had no idea the parade was going on. I had to wait 3 trains just to get on a train to get downtown,
Oh,
because
okay.
it was just like the platform. I've never seen so many people in one place. The platform was packed, and I finally like was on BART, like kind of like this to get to the interview. I was talking to the recruiter, and they're like, "Oh, totally understand. We'll just start whenever you get here and stuff." They were super nice about it.
Yeah.
The
Oh, that's cool.
interview was basically pair programming. So
Okay.
like they asked a few questions about my background, but then like we sat down at a computer with an editor and stuff, and say, here's a feature, let's implement this feature, and then here's a bug, let's fix the bug, right? So
Okay.
kind of work on the feature, move on to the bug. And it's I was interviewing with this guy Bo, who I'm still connected with, even though I didn't take the job there. But like it
Okay.
was such a good experience, like we stayed in touch and stuff. But we got to the bug, and I was looking at this bug, and I was like, who, like it was some internal tool that we had to fix a bug on, right? It was a real issue, and we were going to actually fix it. They were kind of getting free labor from me.
Yeah.
And I was like, who's the user of this? Because we like there was kind of a decision point. He's like, oh, should we do this? Should we do that? I'm like, well, who uses it? And he's like, oh, her over there. I was like, is it
Yeah.
okay if we go talk to her? And he's like, oh, yeah, let's do that. So we went over and talked it through with her and got her opinion on which thing we should do, which would be more helpful. And then we went and did that, So it was like,
That's
I got a
awesome.
job offer from them. It was, but I think that moment for them was like, oh, this person, like, they're not just going to sit there and like, just code it out.
Yeah.
They're going to, like I read an article really just like in the last couple of days, just talking about how it's much more important to be doing the right thing than to be
Mhm.
doing the wrong things really, really well. you know, it's
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
kind of a higher order bit, So, and their example was, in binary, an 8 is a 1 0 0 0 0, and a 7 is a 0 1 1 1, right? Like it's much more
Mhm.
important to be flipping that first bit and be going directionally in the right direction, even if you're not doing it very well, than it is to be doing super busy and like getting all kinds of stuff done that's not the right thing, right? So, um,
Yeah.
anyway, that's a lot of talking.
Yeah. No, 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 it's all good. This is a great conversation. I'm really enjoying this. Yeah, B1 Mind on Twitch is like saying, yeah, imagine asking for the user for input, hired on the
Yeah.
spot. Yeah. No, I think that's great, and this is like, we'll kind of go on tangents still, but like, I think this is a good skill to have. Like, challenge what the problem is. Like, okay,
Mhm.
yeah, we need to fix this because that thing doesn't work. Well, is that really the problem, or is like that other problem a symptom of something else? And like spend a and this is something that comes with experience, like, because like I remember when I started off, it's like, okay, here's the bug I got to fix, and like I was so laser focused on not the big picture. I was just like, okay, this thing just doesn't work, so fix that. But like, how does that fit into like everything though? Like,
Mhm.
and I think when you can take a step back and like, and this is also a team thing too. Like, is this really what we're trying to fix, or like, or
Mhm.
let's like kind of punt on this for now, and let's like look a little deeper maybe and stuff. Um and I say that because even as somebody who might be starting off, your input is super valuable. And in fact, I would say like somebody who is literally fresh eyes on something is probably one of the best people to challenge something, or like pick and prod at. So
Mhm.
and there's I'll find the tweet because it's a funny tweet, but um I follow this video game developer who built like games in the 80s and late 70s. So like for like Atari, and I think
Mhm.
I think Nintendo too, but there's this story, and so there used to be. I don't play American football, but Tecmo Bowl used to be a very popular video game
Oh yeah.
For American football, and at one point they're like, the game starts. This is something that they're in like a debugging session. They're trying to figure out what's going on with this game, and they're like, I don't get it. Like, there's just the ball in the middle of the field. Like, where are all the players? And then this new person, like this, he said, a junior person comes in and says, did you look inside the ball? And they're like, all these senior people are like, what are you talking about, new person? Like, don't be
Uh-huh.
ridiculous. Sure enough, they debugged, they zoomed in. All the players had shrunk down to like such a small level that they, like, everything was proportionally correct, but it had shrunk so small that it got centered in the center of the ball, I guess. And so that's,
Wow.
and I'm gonna find the tweet, because like I just quote tweeted it a few years ago, saying like, you know, junior folks, your input is super valuable,
Hmm.
and I think it's super true. So, and that story always stands out to me, even though it's not something I lived, because I think it's a very good example of people just, like, yeah, I don't listen to that person. They
Hmm.
just started, So it's
That's a great
yeah,
example of just how, some of the value that an early career person can bring. The Zapier, we were kind of starting to open up to these L1 types, and a lot of them were coming into engineering from our support organization. And in support, you're talking to customers all day, every day, right? Like, you're intimately
yeah,
familiar with the problems that they're encountering as they're trying to, use the application in a way that engineers were not. Engineers might make a zap once in a while. Customers
yeah,
are trying to run their business on this platform, right? So totally different level of like intimacy with the problems that people are encountering. So when you get a support person who had transferred into, kind of worked their way into engineering, and they were on your team, it was like having a superhero around. Like, you'd be trying to
yeah,
make these product decisions. They'd be like, oh no, customers complain about this thing all the time. Like, we need to fix this piece of friction or something. Um,
yeah,
I think it can apply, and just like bringing a fresh, kind of fresh perspective, whatever it is. Um, I was kind of, as you were describing that, like, I was thinking, like, it's not fair to ask the early career person to convince a company of these benefits. But people
mhm,
like us, like people who are established, like, we need to be having these conversations with people at our companies about all the reasons why we need these people around. Like, why it'd be great to have early career people around, why it's better to have more diverse teams in all aspects, including across levels, but everything else as well. And we need to be convincing our companies. We need to be the internal advocates for all this stuff, because you can't be in an interview trying to convince them to hire early career people in general. Like, they've made that decision or not already. It's not
yeah.
the burden the early career people should be carrying, I think.
Yeah, no, for sure. There's that. We got lots of great questions here today.
Oh, good.
Karen Diaz again on YouTube's asking, what are some red flags to watch out for when we interview with tech companies? I've been thinking a lot about how the interview process can sometimes be unfair to neurodiverse slash marginalized folks. Great
Yeah,
question.
excellent question. Um, you know, you start to kind of spot these kind of phrases in job descriptions and things. Like, fast-paced environment. That's, to me, like, oh, you don't have your shit together. Got it. It's like, like
Yeah,
it only feel, everyone kind of has the same number of hours available to them in a day. I mean, fast-paced environment either means they're going to expect you to work way more than 40 hours a week, or that they're just disorganized and just putting out fires constantly. That's, to me, like a huge red flag. If I see fast-paced environment, I'm like, is it, or are you just not organized?
yeah.
Um,
But we have a
I don't know.
foosball table. We've got a foosball table.
Yeah, foosball is great. I had a job where we had a foosball table. I've had jobs where we had ping pong tables. It's fun. It doesn't.
Yeah.
It's not worth it if it's a crappy work environment.
Yeah, no, no, for
What
sure.
have you run into? Like, what are red flags for you?
Yeah, the just like constant priorities changing. This is
Yeah.
stuff learned on the job, so it was like too late at this point, but it's like constant like this was at a startup, and like don't get me wrong, I get it that startups can be scrappy and you're not sure, but
Hmm.
like the, the management just wasn't doing their job, and like, and it you know uh, I'm totally fine with like if somebody comes up to me and says like, okay, like we normally don't do this, but do you mind putting in some extra hours this week? We've got this big
Hmm.
demo, take a couple days off later or something like that. I'm good with.
Hmm.
But when you see these things happening more and more frequently, it's kind of like it to me it cues mismanagement,
Hmm.
at whatever level. But in terms of
Priorities, like
interviews, yeah,
I'll say one
yeah,
thing
yeah.
about
Sorry, go
that.
ahead.
Priorities. It's just like that thing I was just talking about of like, which bit are they trying to flip, right? Um,
Yeah,
so something you can ask in an interview, and this is something I ask in every interview, is how do you make decisions? And
yeah,
people are like, oh, good question. And like you often, if it's a panel, like you'll see people kind of look at each other like, oh yeah, we don't do this very well. But it's
yeah,
really revealing. Is there a structure? Do they have at Zapier we had whole frameworks around how to make decisions. Like we had a couple of different ways you go about it based on kind of the how serious the decision is, what the implications were. But if they don't have a good answer for
yeah,
that, it's probably pretty ad hoc, and they might be making good decisions or they might be making terrible decisions, and they probably don't have a good way to evaluate which one they're doing. So
yeah.
that's one of the questions I always ask.
Yeah, for sure. I have some more thoughts there, but Sophia was just following up on another question for me. She
Yeah.
was asked, sorry, they were asking, did the collaboration that I was talking about previously in the interview, you pushed it that way? How did you do that? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, well, one, I think at Netlify, we have a really good culture of just collaborating. So like, I think that also helped in that particular interview. But like, even the one when I interviewed at Facebook, it's like, getting back to what I was saying. Uh, I still get nervous in interviews. So like, one way I've found for me to become less nervous, even if I know what I'm talking about, is I just, not everybody likes small talk, but I'll be like, hey, how's it going? Yeah. And then just constantly talking out. This is actually something that's very good in general. If you are interviewing and you happen to have to do live coding, it happens. People don't know what you're thinking. So you need to really say literally everything you're thinking about out loud. It sounds weird, but otherwise you'd be literally at the interview and you'd be like, okay, let me try this. Okay, scribble, scribble, type something, look at the
Mm-hmm.
whiteboard, but you're not talking. It's like, what like I was saying, they have no idea what you're thinking. The other thing is it immediately shuts down collaboration because you're not talking. So I just make it a point to just talk. I don't mean just ramble on senselessly, but like I always just well, I say hello, how's it going and stuff, and then I don't know how it always comes up, but I played rugby for years, and I seem to always just bring it up, and somebody's like, "Oh, I know somebody who played rugby," and then like and then all of a sudden we're not talking about the interview. You know what I mean? Which is a good
Mm-hmm.
place to be as well. Like there's still the interview, but I don't know if
Yeah,
that
because I feel like
answers
there's a couple of things that the interviewers are trying to accomplish, right? Like they they need to know that you have the skills to do the job. They also want to know what it's gonna be like to work with you. And this is
Yeah,
where a lot of bias comes in too. Like, like you're making a connection about some shared experience. Somebody else may not have a shared experience with the interviewers, right? So it's, there's no reason you shouldn't do that. These are going to be your coworkers, like but it's just something to kind of keep in mind. It's like, as an interviewer, I pulled back a lot from asking about kind of outside work stuff. It's none of my business, like we're here to
yeah,
have a business relationship. If it comes up, great, like let's connect or whatever. Um,
yeah.
so I don't know. But I don't know. Like I said, I didn't have a good summary of that point, but you know what I'm saying. We're at that point
It's
in the
all good.
stream.
It's all good.
Now we're in, so
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And for folks who've caught previous streams anyways, we always go on tangents. It's a good thing, I think, because it's just fun to flow through all kinds of
yeah.
stuff. Um, but getting back to what people were asking about red flags is like
Hmm.
there's trying to think of red flags, but like, eh, you know, you definitely want to ask questions. Like I might be saying the obvious, but some people actually don't ask the interviewers questions. Like you get asked, okay, do this task. Let's see what you do, and then from somebody interviewing people, if you don't have any questions for the interviewer, that signals a couple things, maybe, and is like the interviewer might be like, oh, maybe they're not really interested in this company, or
Mm.
like, but also it's just good to dig into things. And like one thing I've asked before at a couple interviews is like, what do you not like about your job? And surprisingly, people are typically pretty honest, like, yeah, well, this, because like all of a sudden it's like, I don't know if it just kind of disengages it from the interview or something, but like, just like, yeah, tell me what's bothering you, kind of like, that's not how I say it, and people are just like, yeah, they'll be like, yeah, well, these tests keep failing all the time and that's slowing us down and stuff, or like, I don't like that I have to do this and stuff. And so I just like hearing that's not so much red flags. This is the opposite. It's just trying to get honest feedback. But other things I look for too is like you were saying before about like potentially them being disorganized. Like I'm gonna ask, like do you test your app? Like what's your continuous integration, continuous deployment look like? Because if there's nothing there, then that means somebody is doing this manually. And I've done manual deploys before in the
Mm.
past,
Mhm.
and it's error prone. And like at one place, these deployments used to be like hours. So like we'd start at 5 p.m. and finish at like 2 in the morning, like this, like, so like, just, what's automated, like, uh, other stuff, ask a manager, because like, how, when's the last time you took vacation, or how much vacation do you take?
Oh, that's a good one.
And because like even though companies, and I was very reluctant because when I worked at Dev2 and Netlify, they're both American companies, and so there's this unlimited PTO. And coming from, because I'm in Canada, for folks who might not be aware, like I and all those jobs I had, you were like allotted like at this point in my career in Canada, it's like 4 or 5 weeks depending on the place I'm at, and they usually take off time for like holidays as well. So like, and that's guaranteed vacation. And there's, if you want to get into the taxi stuff about it, like that you get that money back if you leave the company or something. But I was very
Mhm.
reluctant when I went to go. Uh, yeah, sorry, Sophia. Yeah, the collaboration I was talking about was my interview at Netlify. Yeah, um, but yeah, like with the unlimited PTO, I remember when I was speaking to one of the founders who was like kind of wrapping up things for my interview at Dev2, and I told her, Jess Lee, I said like, I am literally gonna take 5 weeks vacation. Uh, is that okay? Like I hadn't signed anything at this point. I said I just want to know, because like I don't want to take this job and then all of a sudden you tell me, oh,
Mhm.
it's unlimited PTO, but it's actually only 2 weeks, and
Yeah, unlimited
and
PTO, the whole topic. Like it's not unlimited. There is a limit. They're just not saying what the
yeah,
limit is. Like you can't just not work, right?
yeah,
Unlimited implies like I never work, right? So there's a limit somewhere, right? So it's really good to
yeah.
that's how did they react to
It was like really positive. She's like, oh yeah, for sure. Like they were encouraging this stuff. So, and like,
that? Oh,
and
good.
I think honestly, I ended up taking 6 weeks that first year there.
Hmm.
Uh, and, and the thing is like, I think, I think from like an employer's perspective, like, and I'm not saying this is good at all, but like, I think sometimes they think like, well, they're not working, they're taking too much vacation. But for me, like, I am actually a better worker if I take off time. Like, I'm
100%.
I'm gonna come back like energized. I'm gonna be
Hmm.
like totally firing on all cylinders. So it's like, it's in your best interest to let me kind of, like I was
Yeah,
snowboarding last week. Like that
yeah.
did me a ton of good. Uh,
I preach this to my teams. Yeah,
so
you're going to do better work if you're rested. I mean, that's just how it
yeah,
is. Like to me, this type of work, being a developer, being an engineer, is creative work. You're creating something that wasn't there before.
yeah,
Different than working on a factory, like on an assembly line, or working at a restaurant where you're serving food. Like those are all valid jobs, like absolutely, but they're not, you know, it's not maybe quite to the level of being an artist, but like some people do think of themselves that way too. So you're creating
Yeah.
something, and that takes a lot of brain power. You're like trying to hold a system in your head. Here's a new, like trying to imagine different ways this piece of the system could be different, then figuring out how to
Yeah.
implement it. Like it's heavy brain work, right? So and your brain's not literally a muscle, but like it works better when you're
Yeah. Yeah.
rested. So
Yeah, exactly. So I know that was kind of a tangent and stuff, but I can't think of red flags at the moment, but like I think it's more just like stuff to ask people during the interview. I think is important. So like I was saying, ask a manager like, hey, when did you last take vacation? Or I really liked your question. I've never asked that. What's your management style? That's a great
mhm.
question to ask. Um,
I have a couple of the
but yeah,
red flags
other
though. Um,
okay,
so one is, when they on the job description having like kind of a laundry list of requirements, like so if they're listing, everything everything that they could think of when they wrote the job description,
mm,
that shows sort of a lack of forethought or something. Like a lot of it just kind of is in
yeah,
the way that things are worded. So if there's a lot of, for me, a red flag, it's not necessarily a red flag for everybody. There's a lot of gendered language in the job description. That tells
okay, yeah,
me, a lot of like, kind of like, I don't know, like if it's kind of, I mean, if there's militaristic or sports type style language or something, to me, that's kind of like, that's not the type of team I want to be on. Maybe that works for some people.
hmm,
That's not the type of team I want to be on. Or if it's a lot of kind of building in sort of gender assumptions and things into that. It also tells me
yeah,
that they're not serious about having diverse teams because it's going to turn off a lot of
hmm,
people, women
yeah,
and people from underrepresented groups and stuff. So uh, that's one thing. The other thing that I was gonna say, so let's see, laundry list, and then the other thing was poop. Oh well, maybe it'll
well,
come
if it
back.
comes
Maybe
back
it'll.
to you, yeah, yeah, throw it out. Um, but yeah, I think asking questions because the thing with the interview is like it's a gamble on both sides.
Mhm.
Like you have a very finite amount of time with these people, and they have a finite amount of time with you, and then you make this big life decision, and it's like it's I don't mean that in like it's super overwhelming. I just mean like it's you never know how it's gonna go. Like you could start a job and then like three. I've only done this once, but like after 2 or 3 months at a place, I was like, they were telling me I had to be there later all the time for some reason, and I was like,
Mm,
no, that doesn't fly with me. But that didn't show up initially,
yeah,
um, but yeah, it's just I don't know. Yeah, I think just asking as many questions as you can, because you really only have a finite amount of time. Um,
yeah.
the
You
other
should be
thing too
interviewing the
is like,
company. Oh, go ahead.
yeah,
Yeah, another thing. What was the other
no, no,
thing?
no, go ahead, go ahead.
I don't know
My
what the
my
other
brain
thing
kind of
was.
froze.
Oh, okay,
Yeah,
all right,
yeah,
cool. So yeah, I mean, the thing that I think a lot of people don't realize in an interview situation is that the interviewer wants you to do well. They're trying to fill a need on the team. They're trying to hire a new teammate, so they want you to succeed.
yeah,
So, by default, they should be coming in being like, "Hey, show us what you got. Like, I'm excited to meet you," and like that should be the vibe. Um,
yeah,
so if they come in and that's not the vibe, I mean, there are absolutely times when they've already kind of decided it's an internal person. They just have to go through the motions of interviewing a couple people. That sucks, and
yeah.
you're probably going to get a very different vibe in the interview. But we just had about the kind of like the implications of it. We just had somebody in Collab Lab who was saying, like she lives in Hawaii and she
Okay,
got this job in San Francisco, and they're like, you need to move to San Francisco for this job, and she's like, didn't she wasn't super psyched about it. Like I shouldn't probably say that on the stream in case somebody from the company is watching, but she was like it's like seemed like a really good opportunity. It's like her first job offer, and she was like, oh
okay,
man, but I'd have to like uproot my life and move to this other city. So it was really cool of the company trying to backtrack
yeah,
on like that a little bit. That they were actually like, for the first 3 months, you don't have to move. If at that point,
mhm,
like, it's kind of mutually, we're both into it. At that point, we would want you to move to San Francisco. And so she's like, okay, that takes a little of the pressure off. to me, and
Okay.
I don't know, I think this is somewhat of a convention, or I don't know how widespread it is, but I kind of consider the first 90 days, a lot of times that's sort of the probationary period for the employee. It goes the other
Yeah.
way too, I think. So like that first 90 days is when you see behind the curtain a little bit, like in an interview, it's like being on the first date or something. Both sides are putting on a good
Yeah.
face, and um, you can ask about things that are hard and like what's your least favorite part of that job, and they're going to give you an answer, and it's probably not, they're not lying, but it's also probably not the thing that's the worst about their day-to-day
Yeah.
experience of it. So I don't know. I feel like, but after 90 days, like you kind of understand what the real deal is. And to me, like if you
Yeah.
quit in the first 90 days, like no fault. Like it's I would be, if I wanted the person to stay, and they just sort of quit without talking to me about
Mhm.
what the problems were, I'd be bummed. Um,
Yeah.
so it's definitely more professional to be like trying to address the issues in the first 90 days and see if it can be better. And if there's improvement,
Mhm.
maybe you stay on, that kind of thing. But those first 90 days are kind of a no fault, like on both sides, to be honest, like kind of
Yeah.
cut the
No,
relationship
no,
off
yeah.
if it's not working.
Yeah, that makes sense. And the thing too, from like a company perspective, I would like to think that they want you to succeed because there is a
Hmm.
cost to hiring somebody new.
Oh yeah.
It's not just your salary. It's like, okay, let me get all your equipment probably. Let me onboard you. Like there's like tens of thousands of dollars that go into somebody
Oh
that
yeah.
uh, I don't want to say it's lost, but like that investment is not recouped if somebody just cuts
If
out
if you're 89 days into the 90 days and the person leaves, that's a huge loss for the company, because you're thinking like
yeah.
all the time for the recruiters, all the time people spent interviewing, the people that they didn't hire. So there's opportunity costs there. There's all, it's and that it literally costs
Yeah.
money to post on certain job boards. Like it's a
Yeah.
lot of money. So
Yeah. And,
um, yeah,
yeah.
they do
And
want
I'm
you to
saying that
succeed. I think it's a great point.
yeah. And I'm saying that not to, I don't mean that in the sense like for folks who are taking that first job and they don't like it after 90 days, like definitely still leave and talk to the
Hmm.
people. But I just wanted to mention that because like even if the company didn't like people, like it's in their best interest to make this person succeed, like,
Yeah, for sure.
so,
Yeah,
but yeah,
and it's
uh,
that's kind of thing that cost is something that the company will hopefully learn from. Like, oh, hey, we had this year we had X number of people leave like halfway through their first 90 days. What's going on? We
yeah,
need to get better at this. Is hopefully the conversation that ends up happening. So don't feel bad. Like
yeah,
if it's not working for you, definitely find yourself a better
yeah,
situation if you
exactly.
can.
Yeah. The other thing I was gonna say about hiring is like nobody likes getting a job rejection. It's it sucks.
Yeah.
But it's not always because you weren't good enough for that job. There could be many factors. There could be like you were mentioning, which is they've already decided on somebody internal and they just have to go through it because it's a legal thing. But there could be other things like even if it's a remote company, for example, they might want to hire somebody remote, but they might want people in certain time zones just based on the team dynamic, maybe a support level and stuff. So
Mm-hmm.
so like you could be an amazing fit for the team, but you're just not in the right time zone, and that could be another reason. Another reason could be is like you're still amazing, but somebody else just maybe happen to be a little better, or something else just slightly changed the
Mm-hmm.
decision. And again, getting back to my point about like there's a finite amount of time when you interview people. It's like
Mm-hmm.
it's a gamble again, like I was saying. So like I just wanted to mention all that because like for folks who are getting rejection, sometimes it's not necessarily you as well. And I know it's crappy when you don't get feedback from an interview as well.
Yeah.
That's happened to me too. It's like they're like, oh well, we can't because of something something, and it's like, you know, just let me know. Like it's not because like I'm trying to rig something. It's I just want to know what I should improve on, or where were my gaps, and then
Mm-hmm.
then I can learn from that. But that
Yeah.
that's something else that's not prominent, like good feedback from an interview. Yeah.
Yeah. It's a very real thing that, the company may like you and you may not be a good fit for that team.
Yeah.
And recruiters, it's literally their job to fill roles, right? So they might talk to you and like, oh, I have to tell you no for this role, and they'll keep you in mind if you do well in the interviews and things. They'll keep you in mind for future roles. Like to me, this is I know it's really hard in some cases. Like you're trying to break into that first job, you got bills to pay, like you just went through this expensive boot camp, all this stuff, and it feels very near term. Like I need to get a job, I need an
Mhm.
income. In a lot of ways, like once you're, I guess maybe once you're established or something, like try to think of it in more of a long term thing. Like you're managing your career, like
Yeah.
these, you make a good impression with this recruiter. 5 years from now, that recruiter goes to another company and you're interviewing there, and they're like, "Oh, I remember you. I felt really good about that
Yeah. Yeah.
interview." You know what I mean? Oh, you have more experience now. Oh, I'm psyched. Like that kind of thing. I don't know how many times that kind of thing has played out for me over my career. Or like I meet somebody in an
Yeah.
interview at one company, I'm a manager later. I'm like, oh, I'm going to see if I can find that person again and see what their situation is. Like that stuff happens all the
Oh
time.
yeah.
Tech is not, it's a big industry kind of, but in some ways it's pretty small, and like you
Oh
start
yeah.
segmenting down by like the types of roles and all that kind of stuff. And pretty soon you're bumping into the same people over and over again. So.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I have thoughts on that too. I just wanted to just mention what Anna Nettles dropped in the LinkedIn chat, talking about the red flags. Yeah, definitely one of the red flags for them is the gendered language and way too many job description bullets, especially if it's
Mhm.
entry level role. And I totally feel that too. Even as somebody more senior, like there was one job. Uh, I doubted myself. Like I looked at the job description and I was like, I don't know if I, check off everything they're looking for. And I literally spent 6 weeks before I applied to it. It was at Khan Academy, and which is a great educational
Mhm.
platform, and it's no dissing their what was the job description. I think for me, I just there's that self doubt when you see these things, and like and now it's like I'll still apply now, and I just want to mention that to people, like obviously if you don't like none of the things fit like what you're doing, then maybe don't apply. But if you're like, I've got like a good chunk of those, I should just apply
Or I have
still because you never
transferable
know.
skills. Like it drives me crazy that drives me bananas that they'll like like in the job descriptions they'll say must have React or something, and you're like, but I'm really good at Vue.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
I can learn React. I can learn React this weekend. I'm really good at Vue. Okay, is that not good enough? Like being like when they're
Yeah.
too specific. And this is also a very gendered thing. Like you saw that and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do all that. So those 6 weeks, did you like kind of bone up on some of the skills and then applied? Is that what you did?
No, I mean I was working at the
You
time,
just
so like
oh, okay. You went ahead and
it
applied.
was I applied eventually, but it was really like I I can't remember what it was that made me pause. I think it was more like
Hmm.
I didn't think I had enough experience, even though I'd been in the industry for a while. And
Yeah, yeah.
the thing that it caused for me was like all this self doubt and imposter syndrome, and
Hmm.
imposter syndrome is a whole other thing we can talk about too. But like I,
But this is where like
but
the research says that like you as a man, like you see that and you're like, oh, I don't know if I can do all that stuff. I'll apply anyway, right? And
yeah,
a woman's like, oh, I don't know if I can do all that. I'll look for a different job. Like that's what the research
yeah,
says happens a lot, and it's both reactions I think are valid. I would like the thing to understand is that as somebody putting a job description in the world, um, if I'm really careful about it, I'm careful to like say Python or a similar language or something like that type of thing. But if I'm not being careful
mhm,
about it, I'm gonna be like, oh, we use Python. They have to know Python. And that's I think a lot of people aren't careful about
yeah,
writing these job descriptions, or they're in a hurry, or they're a recruiter and they don't really know that if you know Java, like you'd be fine doing Python or whatever. So
yeah,
just realize that like a lot of times like these things might read like they're really specific, but really they need someone to solve problems, and they need someone who can learn. They don't need you to know all
exactly.
the stuff when the day you step in the door. So
Yeah, no, and you're totally right on calling out that like that statistic or whatever about guys just applying and
mhm,
fake it till you make it kind of like
mhm,
um but the thing I wanted to point out about the doubt I had was like I got major imposter syndrome, and I hear people talk about they have imposter syndrome all the time, and I don't know if this is a spicy take, but I think a lot of times people don't have imposter syndrome. I think it's just they haven't learned this particular thing yet, which is not the same thing. It's like to
Hmm.
me, imposter syndrome's like, I don't know. I'm super competent at this, and then one day, based on something somebody says or something I see, I'm like, oh, I'm terrible at this. Like I can't do this. You know,
Like me after
that's
that interview with Julian LeConte. I was like, oh, I don't know
yeah,
jack about JavaScript. Oops.
yeah. Yeah, and you know, like, so like I just wanted to bring that up because like when I have talked to career changers or like early career devs, a lot of them say they have imposter syndrome, and I don't think they do. I think it's more I'm still learning, and that's okay. You just so it's I don't know if
Yeah, that's a
they're
little more like what I think maybe what you're getting at is like they're maybe in too much of a sort of a fixed mindset. Is that the right term? Like it's the whatever the opposite of growth mindset is. Um, and so
yeah
like if I don't know the thing already, like I'm gonna people are gonna discover that I'm a fraud. Is kind of that
yeah
mindset. Whereas you want to be in much more of a like you have to be as a developer. I think to be an effective to have an effective web development career, you're always
mhm,
going to be learning. Stuff's changing all the
yeah
time. If even if just APIs are changing, and like but like new frameworks and all this kind of stuff, right? So you have to have this mindset that you can learn, that you're capable of learning, and that if you don't know something now, it's not a deficit on your part. It's because
mhm,
you just haven't encountered it. And but if you dig in, like you'll be able to figure it out. Like you have to have that kind of confidence. I think that comes with experience.
yeah
It's hard, really hard to do at first, but just trust that like if you got through a boot camp or you like went from not knowing HTML to be able to kind of write a simple React app, like that's
yeah
proof that you can do this stuff. So just
yeah
trust that you can
100%.
keep learning.
Yeah, for sure. And like everybody goes through it. Like I know when I've like even now when I'm learning something like I don't get it. I don't get it. And then aha, I get
Yeah.
it. And
Oh, I
then
needed a
that
semicolon
feeling,
right there. Yeah.
yeah. And it's so satisfying when it actually clicks for you.
Mhm.
Um but the other thing I was going to say too is my brain sizzled after that comment, but um like yeah, the thing getting back to what you were saying about like to have a longer career, like I'm 100% aware that I do not know everything. It would be preposterous for somebody to say they know everything. And I don't usually carry myself as somebody cocky, but I'm confident in that I know I can learn things. That's what
Mhm.
my superpower, amid other superpowers maybe, but like that is something that I can bring to the table. Like that's what I know. Like, hey, yeah, never done that, but I'm sure I can learn it. And I think it's also easier to say something like that when you have more experience. Whereas if it's just like your first job and it's like, yeah, never touched that, but I can learn it. Like it might not carry as much weight, but regardless, I think if you can get that superpower of being able to learn and get the confidence from that, then I think can't guarantee anything, but I think you're going to be pretty better off, and just accepting that, hey, yeah, I don't know this now, but I will know it,
Mhm.
so that's
Yeah, 100%.
yeah. Yeah. I know we've only got about 10 minutes, and I know you wanted to show some stuff maybe. Oh, hey, EJ just dropped in the
Oh,
chat.
nice.
Hey, EJ.
What's up, EJ?
Um, yeah, I think EJ's looking for their role, a new role at the moment still. So if folks are looking for
Hmm.
an awesome human who is amazing at accessibility and front end web development, hit up EJ. Just gonna
Definitely.
drop that. Um,
Fully
but
endorsed.
yeah,
Yep.
yeah, the yeah, what I was gonna say. Yeah, we got about 10 minutes. I know you wanted to maybe show some code snippets. I don't We can definitely go over a little more and the code snippets and stuff. I think this kind of touches on another thing, which is like we were kind of talking about it at the beginning, and I kind of alluded to it a bit too, is like I think another thing that's super difficult right now, and like the pandemic happened, lots of people wanted to move into tech. I think like I think right now, like for people more senior, like finding jobs is that don't want to say easier, but there's a lot
Hmm.
more options. Whereas there's like an overabundance of like early career devs right now, and everybody's trying to land not necessarily the same role, but like, you know, there's definitely big chunks of people that are looking for the same roles. And I think that's another thing that's making it like tough on folks.
Yeah.
And this is why I always say, like, if you can stand out in some way, you know, like, and obviously don't, you know, like if you have other things going on in your life, you know, like take that into account. But if you can do something to stand out, and like, and it's completely coincidental that I wrote this blog post and that we're doing this, but like I just dropped some tips. I'll drop the link, but just some stuff you can do for your portfolio in terms of like standing out, which is like, you know, like even in the Collab Lab, everybody builds the same application, but they always end up looking different and they
Hmm.
behave maybe slightly different. But like the general idea is there. But like you can go a little further than that, you know, because like these projects are public, and then like people can still work on these things even after the Collab Lab. So like, you know,
Hmm.
they could be like, oh, maybe let's add some testing to this, or let's improve accessibility and stuff. And those are things that can differentiate you from other people. And especially like I've done a lot of front end in more recent years, you know, like if you have even an okay amount of accessibility skills, you're already going to be standing out from a lot of people, because there's a lot of people that, believe it or not, accessibility is still not, you know, top priority.
Hmm.
And I know, like, for example, at Netlify, and I'm sure at Assistive Labs, you know, like it's definitely a requirement. Like our front ends, when they get interviewed, like accessibility comes into play, semantic markup and stuff. So if you can, you know, stuff like that to just differentiate yourself, maybe automate something. The
Hmm.
other thing I was thinking of was like, and I've seen this repeatedly, is people will have their portfolio somewhere, you know, whether it's like Vercel or Netlify, but it'll always be like the Netlify URL, like
Yeah.
myawesometesite.netlify.app. And like $5 to $10 US, you can get a custom domain, and it looks so much more professional, even if you're not doing too much with it. So those are kind of the
Hmm.
things I was thinking. But I don't know if like we're booked till 2:30 my time, so like in like 6 minutes. But are you okay with going like another like 10 or 15 minutes if you wanted to kind of talk about like the code snippets and stuff? Because I
Yeah, for
think
sure.
I think this is something super important too. I'm gonna switch us over to code view. Um,
Yeah. Up and out. Okay. All right. Cool. No problem. Um, yeah. Frameworks. Oh, that's cool. Yeah. So frameworks are just tools, and so all those frameworks, React, like all that kind of stuff, it all compiles down to HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And maybe WebGL or something like that, right? So, but you can build in those tools directly, and you can do a lot with that. I mean, that's what we used to do. 20 years ago, we didn't have front end frameworks. That's like a pretty recent thing. I know 20 years doesn't sound like it's that long ago. 10 years ago, we didn't really have, like, these frameworks were much more immature. There was a session, actually, EJ was the other half of this session, where we did some mock interviewing for at Collab Lab as part of our career lab program. And one of the mentors, this guy Raj from India. So we're doing our first South Asia team this cohort, which we're super excited about. If anybody is in anywhere from basically like Iran through Bangladesh, so like Afghanistan, Pakistan, India, um, Nepal, Bhutan, like any of those countries in those time zones, we're running a team for you. So definitely apply. Anyway, Raj asked EJ this kind of deceptively simple question, and I don't know if EJ in the comments if you want to like like comment on this, but he said, if we have an index.js, why do we need an index.html? And this was like an interview question, sort of, like, and it's like, oh, wait. So I thought it was really, I really love this question because it's a little bit subtle. It's like, uh, you know, if you don't, it's this kind of thing that would be really revealing. If you don't understand how the thing is working, like what's, the order of operations, blah, 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 you would be a little bit lost and be like, oh, I don't know. I've never thought about it before. If you did know those things, you'd be able to, speak pretty confidently about it without having to think too hard about it. So it was like this nice question of kind of like separating people who understand how the applications works or applications are working, and then people who don't. The, anyway, you need an index.html because that's the thing the browser actually loads first, right? And then everything else is linked from that, and that kind of bootstraps the whole thing. But it's it needs a place to start up. And so anyway, I'm just going to show a couple of little projects here. I tend to just build stuff like little software toys for myself. So like I have this where is it, 5 o'clock beer, which I guess just actually it will might take a second to load. So it shows the world, and right now one of the places in the world where it's 5 o'clock, Santa Maria, Cape Verde. So Cape Verde, if you don't know, is kind of off the coast of Africa. Let's see. Some of the ones. So I went on a road trip last year or last summer. This like super long road trip, 13,000-mile road trip, and uh, yeah, it was 7 weeks long. And I wrote myself a little app. Actually, I got the basic app running the night before I left, like literally. But it was, I was going to put it in mobile view because it was really meant to be used on my phone. Basically, the idea was every time I stopped for gas, I would put in, the phone, I had Google Maps integrated, so the phone already knew where I was. So I had that piece of data, the date and time. And then I would input manually, which is now turned off. I would input, the number of gallons, and then the cost of actually the number of gallons or liters, because I was part of the trip was in Canada, and then the cost of the gas. And so what that allowed me to do was compile stats. So here's like the final numbers, almost 13,000 miles, 49 days on the road, blah, 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 the average cost of the gas, the average miles per gallon, all this stuff, right? The farthest kind of north, south, east, and west that I got. It also let me, like I could map segments of the trip, so I could kind of, anywhere that I was, I had a record of, where I went. So the first thing I did that, was to just like make it so I had a form that I could input the data and capture the data. And then on the trip, I actually, over the course of the 7 weeks, kept adding features. So like, there's a little dot here. I added the ability to add like a kind of a point along the route because by default, this would have mapped me down here, So I wanted to be able to point out that I went up to that little peninsula. But anyway, all this is just, I guess this is kind of a built thing. But it's really, you see, like, I think service workers helping. I'm not really sure. But, this is a little more complex than a lot of my things, but it's because I worked on it for, 7 weeks. But it's pretty simple. It's like, this is some, like there is Firebase, so it actually has a database, which is more than most of my apps do. But like it's like I'm not doing a bunch of fancy stuff. Like this is native. These are all native kind of JavaScript APIs. So this is the style of thing that I like to build for myself. Let's see. I wanted to show kind of one that I've been working on recently. Where did it go? Oh, it's at the very top. That's why. Yeah. Is so I had this idea of like I've actually done this before. So I have another site. Right. See, that's what I mean. This is like old school web stuff. So I built this site a few years ago just as a way to, kind of highlight some features of what then was kind of new to JavaScript. And this was like this was my first kind of, mhm. What's up? Oh, sure. Yeah, yeah, of course. Yeah. Okay. It was my first time, sort of building something where I just had markdown files and was just sort of parsing that in real time and just showing it on a website, right? Like, so it's like the concept has been kind of rattling around for me for a little while. And then I needed to, I run a small press with my dad. So I needed to build this simple website about the press and stuff, right? And then like his books and whatever. And so I wanted to be able to do this and just have it be markdown, like just keep it as simple as possible for myself since I'm the one who has to maintain the site. So I started off on this other URL that I've owned for a million years, and just uh, try to do it as simply as humanly possible. Um, so I had this kind of this idea that I could, um, like instead of having a bunch of nested folders and like trying to like traverse using PHP down to like find the file, I just have all the files at the top level and just use dashes anywhere that I wanted to be able to use slashes. So in my URLs, if I have like a directory, my page inside the directory, like there are several routes that actually would work for that. Like any combination of those is going to work. So just trying to give myself a lot of flexibility. Um, in turn, that's kind of maybe the innovation of this for me, was that kind of routing piece. All the rest of it is like I just use a library to parse the markdown. I have this little simple app that does things like, figure out where to find the file. And otherwise it's just super simple. So I can show a little bit of how that actually works. So the pages in here, the nice thing, one of the things I like about this is that it's markdown.
Yeah.
So you can actually just read the markdown in GitHub, right? Kind of tell at a glance whether it's correct. And then this is the application. This is the library that I integrate, and then this is the whole application.
Okay.
It's what is it? It's 125 lines. So first thing is pulling that thing. Kind of set up some a couple of little kind of parameters for myself. Then go through and there's a function that figures out kind of what the pieces of the URL are. There's a function that uses those to figure out what the file name is. There's
Okay.
one that I kind of hard code in what the navigation is, and then it figures out whether we're on one of those pages or like what the if that's a piece of the URL. And then there's one that prepares the content. So if you noticed in the markdown file, there was kind of a separator, and above it was just a little
Hmm.
string that was kind of JSON, right? So I think actually that's a similar to dev too. I think they use a similar concept where that top piece is just converted into JSON. It's a little bit of metadata about the page. So I do that
Okay.
and then just kind of return some HTML, and then that's it. That's like literally it. And it's like I love this kind of application because it's just there's just not that much to it. Like I understand everything that it's doing. There was a point where I
Hmm.
built a blogging system for myself, and it was MySQL, and it was like all this stuff, and it was just got I had a commenting system, I had a tag cloud, like I had like what I thought all the features you needed of a blog were, and it ended up being pretty complicated. And at some point, I kind of
Yeah.
lost track of how it all worked. I had an admin thing for myself and all this kind of stuff. And this it's just like I will never not know how this works. Like it's because it's so simple.
Yeah. Yeah.
And yeah, this is just like it's a fun place to be, I think.
Yeah. No, for sure. And I mean, obviously there's a lot of jobs in React right now, so I understand why like boot camps and like Collab Lab are like push for that. But I like that you can take a step back and just kind of not necessarily look under the hood, but you know, there's a lot of people that have opinions on like, should I learn the framework first or learn fundamentals? And people have hard stances on both.
Hmm.
I, I honestly don't know what my opinion is, honestly, on this, because like I think you just want to, you know, be able to create something, and then like you'll learn stuff over time. Like if you
Hmm.
start off with React or Vue or whatever, you'll understand, okay, these are the patterns that I use here, and this is how, okay, this is how I create a list of things, so I need to map over them. And okay, and I might not
Hmm.
be super familiar with arrays in JavaScript yet, but like at some point you're going to hit something where it's not working in React, and I think you're just going to have to look into like, oh, okay, well, this is actually, like you write JSX, but like it ends up generating JavaScript. Like, and I think
Yeah.
some people still are aware of that. Like if you've been around for a while, you probably are aware of it. But it's like it I think just being able to go back to like you're saying, go to the index HTML, like put a button on the page,
Hmm.
um, and then like add an event listener or something, like, this is what React or other frameworks are doing under the hood, but like being able to do it, like just kind of bare bones, I think it's a good exercise.
Yeah. I mean, I guess my take on that question is that most jobs you're going to need to know. You need to be able to work with whatever framework. Like any company that's doing sort of, I don't want to, that's not the right word, but kind of know, it's late in the stream, so serious web development. It's not
Yeah.
quite the right word, but is going to be using some kind of frameworks. Like that's what enables teams to work together. Like React is really good for letting you like take this little piece and work on that, iterate on it without affecting what five other people are doing. Right. That's the whole point of these frameworks. Um, so you need to gain the skills that are going to help you get a job as fast as possible, and probably that means learning a framework or two. The more frameworks you learn, you start to be able to spot patterns and stuff like that, and the more languages you like, all that kind of stuff. But that's stuff that comes over time. To me,
Hmm.
the thing you need to do is not be satisfied with that. Like, learn React. That's a great way to get a job, and start
Yeah.
understanding like go kind of layer by layer, peel back the layers and understand what it's doing, all the way down to like what's the compiled code from a React project. You're writing JSX. That's not what gets, but that a browser doesn't know how to doesn't understand JSX. It gets compiled
Yeah.
down to JavaScript, right? It might get,
Yeah.
might be TypeScript at first, and that gets compiled down to just plain old JavaScript, with all of its faults and warts and stuff, right? So don't be satisfied with that. Like keep digging and like understand what a network request is, status codes, but also like what is it? It's text that's being sent back and forth, from a server to a browser,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
it has a certain format. It's like there are conventions around it, and those things you can look it up. You can learn all that stuff. CSS, how does the cascade and cascading style sheets work? Like that's a question I used to ask a lot when I was interviewing a lot of front end developers. It's like, just tell me about the cascade. They'll be like, I don't know. I've never really thought about it. It's like, oh,
Yeah.
well, if you have an ID and a class name, which one takes precedence? Oh, the ID. So they do know about it, right? But it's like they don't understand the mechanics of it. Once I learned what the mechanics of it were, I was like, oh, it's just a set of rules. Well, duh, because that's how programming works, right? But I
Yeah.
didn't
Yeah.
know what the rules were, and once I learned the rules, CSS made so much more sense. I got a lot
Yeah.
done before I knew that, but once I knew it, it was like, oh, now I can do it with just a lot more confidence, fewer errors, whatever. So
Oh yeah, totally. Because like until you understand how CSS specificity works, it's always difficult
yeah.
to say that. Uh, like you can get pretty far, but then you're gonna run into issues at some point. Um, and it's, once because like even in the past year, I'm like, why is this thing not styling the way I said it?
Yeah.
And I had to dig into it a bit. It's like, okay, I had something else that has a higher specificity, which is why. So then I just had to make my thing more specific so it would work in this particular place. There's always the nuclear option of using important, but that's, I would say, use with care or avoid if you can.
Hmm.
um but yeah,
Uh,
the Oh, what's that?
Oh, I did a presentation on the Cascade. I was going to try to pull it
Oh,
up, but
okay, cool.
it's behind a login, so never mind.
Ah, okay, cool, cool. Well, we're we're over time, like I said, but this has been really great. I love this conversation. Like I every time I start a stream, I'm like, are we gonna be able to talk about something for an hour and a half? And I'm like, okay, we're going past an hour and a half. So
Uh-huh.
no,
Yeah, yeah.
it just shows a great conversation. There's
It's
still
been
so
really
much
fun.
more. Yeah.
Um, I feel like, and there's a bunch of stuff we didn't even get to, I think, but around accessibility, like my current work, my day job. But just one last plug for Collab Lab. It's I think you have a lot of followers who are, kind of trying to break in, and especially with this topic, that being the topic of the stream. You know, whether it's Collab Lab or not, like my my advice to all of you is to just be building, like be practicing. It's all about like getting better is just about doing it. And if possible, do that with other people so you can learn from them. It's even if it's just one other person and you're just pair programming on something, you just have to be a little bit more organized. So you probably have to document, you know, I'm doing this task, you're doing that task, like some of that kind of stuff. You're coordinating, you're getting some of those skills that we try to teach at Collab Lab. And that's how real development teams work. It's very, very rare
Yeah.
that you are building something from scratch by yourself. Like that's almost never the case in a real job. So um, the more practice you can get of anything that simulates kind of real world experience, the better.
Yeah, no, no, totally. And like, yeah, if you want to, like I said, we're over time here, but I think
Yeah.
if you want to another time, definitely we could talk about like the work Assistive Labs is doing, dig into some
Mm-hmm.
accessibility, because I think that'd be super beneficial, especially for folks that were doing the Collab Lab, or even folks that are more front end focused. I really think if you don't have to become an accessibility expert, but you can become pretty good even if you aren't an accessibility expert. It's a bit of
Mm-hmm.
reading, learning some things, get familiar with voiceover and so on. But I think I I'm 100% convinced that like that will definitely distinguish you from other people if you're applying for front end roles. So yeah,
I agree, and it's to me the thing I love about accessibility is that it's like it really appeals to the reason I got into web development in the first place, and sort of the ideals of the early web, which is just that everyone should have access to all of human knowledge, basically, or like all these tools and all these like systems, and
yeah,
like actually, literally somebody said to me, or I saw it was online. They didn't say it directly to me, but they're like, "Oh, old people don't like. Why is it important for them to be online? They're not doing anything really important."
yeah,
I was like, You can't not have do your health stuff online
hmm,
these days. You're probably paying your utility bills online. Like they're not sitting at the table writing checks. I mean, some of them are, but like my dad's 86. He's doing all that. He's online banking. Like that stuff. Accessibility makes it possible for. I mean, we're
hmm,
all going to be in that position, either
yeah,
temporarily, situationally, permanently. Um, just, I mean, I'm like, this is a piece of assistive technology. Like if I didn't have this on,
yeah,
I can't read my screen. So anyway, it's super important, and I do think it does. It's one of those little differentiators, like you're saying. And it's
yeah.
all about standing out when you're trying to break in.
Yeah, I'll leave it as a cliffhanger so that we can do this another time. But yeah, I totally agree. There's just I'm gonna stop talking about it because like we should I'll definitely
Go
have
for
you
another
on
hour. Yeah.
for yeah, yeah, I'll definitely have you on though for another stream, and we can totally dig into this, and because I
Mm-hmm.
think it'll be super helpful for folks. Awesome, this has been amazing. Like I said, it's always great conversation when I have no idea how much time has gone by. So I really appreciate you taking the time, Andrew. I know you got a lot of stuff on the go, and just want to thank you personally for creating the Collab Lab. It's a place, one of my favorite communities to work in, and there's lots of great folks coming out there, and it's rewarding being able to contribute to that community. So it's if like I said, if folks were interested, I'll find the link there for the Collab Lab codes if you want to join in the next cohort. I also dropped some links where you can find Andrew and the Collab Lab. I'll just drop that on LinkedIn as well. And there we
Yeah, and
go.
thanks for everything
Cool.
you've done for Collab Lab too. You're really active over there. It's been great to have you a part of it. And thanks for having me on the stream. It was really fun.
Yeah, no, this is super fun. And yeah, so stay tuned for a future accessibility stream with Andrew, folks. But with that, thanks everybody. I'm going to drop the schedule. Definitely check it out. We got some, I can't even remember who's on next week. I've got too many things on the go at the moment, but check out the schedule. Thanks again, everybody. And we will see you next week. And Andrew, if you just don't mind staying on for a quick second.
Yep.
Bye, everybody.